The bank manager scrutinized her from every angle, questioned her every assertion, and ultimately declined to accept her deposit. However, the moment her son arrived minutes later, a single sentence altered everything. "She is my mother, and I am the owner of this bank." The automatic doors at Hillstone Federal Bank opened with a hiss, allowing the late morning sun and the slow, steady footfall of 73-year-old Gloria Hightower to enter. She walked with a cane not because she required it, but rather because she appreciated the stability it provided. Her dark green dress was pressed. Her silver hair was carefully coiled in the manner she had worn it for decades. She held a check with her name on it in one hand and her purse in the other. Gloria was acquainted with this location. She had maintained her banking relationship with this institution for nearly 15 years, adhering to the same procedures and branch. She typically arrived in the middle of the week, immediately following her breakfast with companions at Janine's diner. However, today was markedly different. When Gloria entered, the woman behind the front desk scarcely raised her head, not even a good morning. This was an unusual occurrence. Gloria did not give it much consideration. It is possible that they were understaffed. It is possible that the young woman was not raised to acknowledge her elders. She proceeded to the counter and waited patiently behind a man wearing a baseball cap. A few minutes elapsed. The teller, a young lady in her early 20s, glanced over Gloria's shoulder with a nervous expression before whispering, "Please wait a moment," and vanishing into a back room. Still holding her check, Gloria stood peacefully and smiled gently. A tall woman in a pale gray blazer approached a few moments later. She possessed straight blonde hair, pointed features, and eyes that appeared to measure rather than perceive. Leslie Ryland, branch manager, was identified by a name badge. Leslie folded her arms and asked, "Ma'am, may I assist you?" Gloria lifted the check slightly and stated, "Yes, I simply need to deposit it into my deposit account." Leslie rejected it. She gazed at it before returning to Gloria. "I would like to view your identification." Gloria replied, "Certainly," as she reached into her purse. She presented the check and her driver's license. It was derived from a retirement account payout, nothing unusual or suspicious. Leslie spent an excessive amount of time scrutinizing the identification card before returning to the check. "And how did you acquire this?" Gloria blinked. "I apologize. This check," Leslie stated, gesturing to it slightly. "It is a substantial sum. We must verify it prior to processing. We have experienced instances where," Gloria inclined her head. "I have previously deposited checks of a similar nature at this location without incident." Leslie smiled with a rigid, insincere expression. "I am confident that you are aware of the recent changes in banking policies." Gloria observed a man who was 2 persons taller than her shift uncomfortably from the corner of her eye. The woman in the background cleared her voice. At this moment, an individual was observing. Gloria exhaled gradually. "Miss Ryland, I have all of my information with me. This is my account, and I have direct deposit. I have been a customer here for years, and my name, address, and ID are all identical." However, Leslie refused to concede. "Nevertheless, we must conduct a more thorough investigation. You'll be required to accompany me to the rear." Gloria experienced it at that moment. "I am not afraid. Not humiliation. Something more akin to a slander. Not only for her, but for every elderly woman who had been talked down to. For each individual who has been subjected to a sideways glance upon entering a room." Gloria stated emphatically, "I would prefer to remain here." Leslie slightly leaned in, modulating her voice. "Ma'am, we will have to report potential fraud and place a hold on the funds if you do not cooperate. We have previously witnessed individuals attempt to pull off similar stunts." The moment Gloria felt her chest constrict was that moment. She was not going to engage in a debate. Not with an individual of this nature. Not in the presence of strangers. However, she was not departing either. Instead, she reached for her phone. Gloria's hands moved slowly, but with deliberate intent, as she extracted her phone from her purse. Leslie's eyes narrowed upon the screen's illumination. "I am contacting my son," Gloria stated in a composed manner, while perusing her contacts. "He will assist in resolving this matter." Leslie's laughter was characterized by a sour quality. "Ma'am, the protocol will not be altered by contacting your son. We adhere to regulations. There is no cause for concern if there are no suspicious activities." Gloria declined to respond. She simply raised the phone to her ear and stepped to the side, away from the counter. She was wary of being treated as if she were naive, as if she lacked the ability to manage her own finances. 2 teller positions were situated behind the glass, and they exchanged glances. The young man at the end of the queue took a small step forward, as if to say something, but he subsequently hesitated. The room was silent, with the exception of the gentle tapping of keyboards and the low murmur of a copier in the corner. Gloria spoke into the phone. "Hello, baby. I am currently at the Bank Hillstone on Meridian. They are experiencing difficulty verifying my check." She paused. "Yes, her name is Leslie, she is the branch manager." Leslie's mandible tightened. "I would be grateful if you would refrain from disclosing the names of the employees over the phone, madam." Gloria did not even glance at her. "I'm fine. I'm just tired." Subsequently, after a brief pause, "All right, I'll wait here." She terminated the conversation and reinserted the phone into her purse. She then turned and said, "My son is on his way," maintaining the same composed demeanor. Leslie crossed her arms. "Ma'am, I must reiterate that raising one's voice or causing a disturbance may result in dismissal." Gloria's cranium was slightly tilted. "Do I appear to be causing a disturbance?" Leslie's complexion became red. She briefly glanced aside before returning. "I am obligated to safeguard this institution. The bank is at risk if funds are not verified accurately. Do you believe that I am a threat?" Leslie abruptly stated, "I believe you are being uncooperative." That concluded the matter. That single phrase. He murmured something under his breath as he stood 2 spaces back. The woman in front of Gloria leaned forward and stated, "She is being respectful. You are the one who is raising your voice." To them, Leslie turned. "We are conducting a confidential transaction, therefore, we request that you exercise discretion." The woman expressed that she did not find the environment to be particularly private. Gloria remained mute throughout the entire event. She did not require an argument. She was not required to defend herself. She simply had to wait. An additional 5 minutes transpired. Leslie pretended to check something on her computer before stepping away, but she kept looking up, much like a dog waiting for the mailman. The youthful teller from earlier returned and whispered a message into Leslie's ear. Her gaze veered towards the entrance. Then, the glass doors reopened. A male in a charcoal gray suit entered the room. Early 40s. No tie, crisp white blouse. Focused yet composed. He walked with purpose, his gait subdued yet assured. He refrained from conducting an examination of the chamber. He proceeded directly to the lobby's center, where he encountered Gloria. "Hello, Mama." Gloria's smile was gentle. "Hello, infant." Immediately, the chamber underwent a transformation. The man turned to face the counter. "Is there an issue with my mother's account?" Leslie approached, uncertain whether to request identification or extend a salutation. A rigid nod was the best she could manage. "Is this your mother?" "Yes," he replied uncomplicatedly. "My name is Grant Hightower." Leslie's lips separated. She briefly glanced around the room before returning to Gloria and Grant. "What do you mean by Mr. Hightower?" Grant removed his leather card holder and positioned it evenly on the counter, revealing his ID, business card, and position. "Hillstone Federal. Chair of the Executive Board." Leslie's voice disappeared. Nobody spoke for an entire 10 seconds. Leslie gazed at the card with an intensity that suggested it might ignite. Her cheek twitched in a subtle manner, a phenomenon that occurs when the brain is still in the process of interpreting the visual information it has just received. She was not hurried by Grant. He stood erect and silent, clasping his hands in front of him. His tone was flat but unmistakably firm. "I am requesting one more time," he stated. "Was there an issue with my mother's account?" Leslie adjusted. "Mr. Hightower, we were simply adhering to the established protocols. It is necessary to verify substantial checks, and Grant interrupted. Sharply, rather than audibly. "You assessed her credibility by examining her face. You inquired about the origin of the check and the manner in which she acquired it. Is this considered standard practice?" Leslie's mouth opened once more, but no words emerged. Her skin had lightened by an entire tint. Grant continued, "Because I have personally reviewed those procedures. I approved them last quarter. The documentation does not contain any instructions to question a long-standing customer while disregarding her identification, particularly in the presence of numerous witnesses in the lobby." The bank had experienced a period of silence. The sole sounds were the steady whir of the AC overhead and the clack of keyboards from employees who were feigning work. No one ventured to turn their gaze away at this time. Gloria's arms were folded loosely as she stood to the side. She was not beaming. She did not appear to be arrogant. She appeared fatigued. Leslie apologized abruptly. "Mr. Hightower. I did not intend to cause anyone any offense. This is simply a misunderstanding." Grant responded, "Nevertheless, you did. You subjected her to humiliation." "I did not." "You succeeded." Grant maintained an unwavering demeanor. "That is the reason it was so weighty." There was no dramatic grandstanding, no yelling, only facts. Presence is sufficient. Leslie's intonation fluctuated. I was unaware that she was your mother. Grant fixed his gaze on her. What is the significance of that? Leslie opened her mouth, then promptly shut it again. Do you hear the way that sounds? He inquired. You have just spoken it aloud for the first time. Gloria was the subject of Leslie's genuine gaze. Her expression was not solely one of humiliation. Fear prevailed. The anxiety of repercussions. Grant gestured towards the chair behind the counter, instructing him to take a seat. I will be responsible for the deposit. Leslie hesitated. That was not a recommendation. Leslie slowly turned and proceeded towards the rear, her shoes tapping against the tile in a hollow sound. Grant stepped forward, picked up the check, momentarily examined it, and then entered a few numbers into the screen. The young teller observed in amazement. There you go, he said, presenting the receipt to his mother. Immediately effective, full deposit. Gloria folded the note in half and nodded. I am grateful, my child. Are you feeling well? I am in good health. For a brief moment, they stood in that position, a mother and son in the midst of a tranquil tempest. Gloria then stated, You were not required to travel all the way down here. Grant observed her. Certainly, I did. Nevertheless, you are preoccupied with meetings and a board that requires your attention. He shook his head. You maintained a household for 25 years with a single income, 4 children, and a Buick that was barely starting. I have a few minutes to spare. She suppressed a snicker. Your demeanor was consistently dramatic. He grinned. And you were consistently the one who maintained composure. However, the moment was not yet completely over. Grant slowly pivoted, allowing his gaze to traverse the room. The customers were still present, with some feigning to check their phones and others immobilized mid-transaction, attempting to maintain an invisible presence while not missing a beat. The woman who was behind Gloria had discreetly retreated, allowing them to pass more freely. Grant received a subtle bow of respect from the individual who had previously spoken. Grant did not respond to them, but he did not disregard them either. He was aware that they would recall every last detail of this moment. Not solely due to his identity, but rather due to what they observed. A woman was made to feel inferior until the truth entered in a suit. Leslie's absence was brief. She returned with a senior associate who was tense, fidgety, and attempting to smile, but was unsuccessful. The older man murmured something to Grant, offered an apology, and then gestured towards the back offices. Grant, however, refrained from departing. She is now in good health, he stated, indicating towards his mother. However, this is no longer a transaction, it pertains to the manner in which she was treated while performing an action that she has completed numerous times without incident. The man began, Mr. Hightower, we are fully aware of the situation and are treating it with the utmost gravity. Miss Ryland has been in this location for less than a year and is still adjusting to the surroundings. Stop, Grant ordered. Please refrain from elucidating her conduct to me. This is not your responsibility, it is hers. Leslie's posture was that of a statue. Her hands were held together too firmly in front of her. Clearly, she was attempting to suppress her tears, or perhaps, to suppress her speech. Grant addressed the associate, Your responsibility is to examine the surroundings of this room and comprehend the implications of treating a respected customer as if she were a criminal solely because she does not appear to possess a yacht. I can guarantee that. Grant raised his hand. Have you ever gazed upon an individual such as my mother and thought, she must be involved in some way? Have you ever considered the possibility of a white customer depositing a check? The man's jaw dropped. That is not, Grant demanded, do not deceive me. I am not the board chair today, I am merely a son. This morning, I observed a woman who has instilled in me the values of honesty, patience, and respect being questioned as if she had forged her own name. Gloria finally intervened. Baby, however, Grant was not yet completed. You had the option to ask her questions in a respectful manner. You could have taken her aside and addressed any concerns you had. However, you caused a disturbance and made her feel unwelcome. The sole reason you ceased was because I arrived wearing a tailored jacket. He permitted the silence to persist. Gloria gazed around and observed the expressions of those around her. Some were ashamed, some were furious, and some were motivated. She tenderly grasped her son's arm. She said gently, Let's depart. We should not squander any more time. His chest remained tight, and his mandible remained set as he turned to her. But he then observed the tranquility that had returned to her gaze. It was the same tranquility that she maintained while simultaneously working 2 jobs and preparing supper. She responded with grace when the world hurled its worst. He agreed. No problem. They proceeded towards the exit in unison, passing the shocked manager, the customers, and the tellers. The manager was unable to raise her eyes. Grant halted before they entered the building. He retreated, gazed at Leslie, and said quietly, "Each customer who enters this establishment is entitled to the same level of respect as your boss. You never know their background or the circumstances that brought them to this location." Then they departed. However, the aftermath had only recently commenced. At the time Grant and Gloria arrived at the pavement outside, his telephone was already emitting an audible hum. Initially, it was his aide. Then, a member of the council. Subsequently, the general counsel of the bank. The word had disseminated at a rate that exceeded their expectations. A portion of the interaction had been recorded by a consumer. It was already in circulation. Gloria briefly observed the situation. "Are you not going to respond to that?" Grant permitted it to chime. "Not at this time." The sun warmed the top of Gloria's head as they continued to walk, slowly and steadily, as vehicles passed lazily down Meridian Avenue. She refrained from uttering a word immediately. Neither did he. They were both in need of a moment of tranquility. She ultimately stated, "You did not need to arrive here so quickly." Grant laughed without beaming. "You repeat that statement on a regular basis." "I am capable of managing my own affairs." "I am confident that you are capable." Gloria halted in front of a bench and took a seat. Grant was standing in close proximity, inspecting the screen of his smartphone. He could observe the notifications mounting up like bricks without unlocking it, but he was not yet prepared to construct anything from them. Leslie Ryland remained seated in her diminutive glass office within the bank, her body immobilized in place. By that time, a regional manager had already reached out. HR desired a report by the conclusion of the day. At that moment, however, none of that was of any consequence to her. She was unable to shake the image of Grant's gaze, which suggested that she was smaller than she had imagined. And it was not because he belittled her, rather, the truth revealed the extent of her judgment. Hailstone Federal's board issued a statement the following morning. An internal investigation had been initiated. Customers would be apprised of modifications to the customer relations policy and sensitivity training. However, that was merely journalistic language. Behind closed doors, the events that were significant occurred. Later that week, Grant occupied the center of the conference table, which was typically reserved for investment strategy and profit reports. This time, however, was distinct. He stated, "I would like all managers to recertify on customer service protocol. However, we are not utilizing the same corporate videos from 5 years ago. We are enlisting external instructors. I am not interested in lectures, I prefer role-playing, reflection, and eye contact." A senior member of the board raised an eyebrow. "That is a substantial transformation." Grant responded, "It ought to be." Additionally, the manager? Grant halted. He was opposed to dismissing Leslie. Not because she did not deserve accountability, but rather because he did not wish for this to be a matter of retribution. His mother did not raise him for that purpose. He ultimately announced, "She has been suspended pending a review. However, my primary objective is to address the culture that conditioned her to believe that such behavior was permissible." Later that evening, Gloria returned to her residence and reclined in her preferred chair adjacent to the window. Despite the soft boil of her evening tea and the ticking of the ancient wall clock, the house was eerily silent. Grant was lying on the sofa, his shoes untied and his tie undone. She stated, "You managed the situation effectively." He shook his head. "I permitted myself to become enraged." "You should have." His gaze was directed upward. "Are you not enraged?" Gloria exhaled a raspy sigh. "My child, I have endured far worse. That was not the first instance in which someone attempted to make me feel unwelcome, and it is likely that it will not be the last," Grant stated. "That is the aspect that causes me the most distress. That is not a novel concept." She drank her tea. "You are not in control of how others treat you, rather, you are in control of how you respond to them." Grant's elbows were resting on his legs as he leaned forward. "I am simply repelled by the fact that you are compelled to respond to such nonsense at this juncture in your life." Gloria grinned. "That's the irony. As I age, I am less inclined to be bothered by it." The words she spoke did not cause me any distress, rather, it was the notion that she believed she could communicate with anyone in that manner. She hesitated. "However, it is possible that she will not do so at this time." Nevertheless, it was not concluded until a positive outcome was achieved. Gloria returned to the bank the following week. The identical footwear. The same purse. Energy that is distinct. Each employee behind the counter sat up immediately upon her arrival. Denise Alvarez, the new interim manager, approached the desk to extend her personal greeting. "Miss Hightower," she addressed her with a gentle voice. "We are overjoyed to have you here." Faintly, Gloria smiled. "I am merely present to withdraw some money." "Certainly. I will provide you with personal assistance." Gloria observed that the posters on the wall had been altered as they approached the counter. Not the ones that advertised savings plans or loans, they were still present. However, there are currently new ones. A series titled "Respect is Standard" was displayed near the entrance. Each portrait depicted a genuine customer from the local community and bore the same tagline: "We are aware of your presence. We are at your disposal. We hold you in high regard." It was not a solution. Not entirely. However, it was a beginning. Denise guided her through the cessation process in a patient and lucid manner. There are no inquiries that are unnecessary. Absence of sideways gaze. Business as usual, conducted appropriately. Denise announced, "We will be conducting community meetings beginning next month. These meetings will be primarily listening sessions. Grant requested that we extend an invitation to long-standing customers such as yourself. Would you be willing to participate?" Gloria raised her eyebrows. "Do you wish for me to deliver a speech?" "This is not a speech, rather, it is a narrative that you may present in any manner you choose." Gloria contemplated the matter. "I will attend, however, I will not embellish any details. We do not wish for you to do so." She exited that day without feeling particularly proud, rather, she felt as though she had been heard. And at her age, that meant something. Gloria once more sat across from Grant that evening, this time in a tranquil banquette within an antiquated barbecue establishment in Fort Worth. They both expressed satisfaction with it. It emanated a scent of cornbread and hickory, and the occupations of either individual were of no concern to those present. "Do you recall the day you were in trouble in 7th grade?" she inquired abruptly, as she nibbled on her baked beans. "Which one?" "The instance in which you confronted that educator, Mr. Hale, who accused you of plagiarizing your paper." Grant inhaled. "Yes, I recall. You returned home with that paper in your hand, tears in your eyes, and a pledge that you had not cheated. I was convinced of your innocence, however. I insisted that you sit down and rewrite the entire document." He grinned. "You stated that occasionally, repeating an action is indicative of ownership," she agreed. "Exactly." Grant gazed at her. "Do you believe that is what this was? Doing it twice?" "No," Gloria replied. "I believe that this time, the rewriting was the responsibility of someone else, not you." He allowed that to remain undisturbed for an extended period of time. She subsequently stated, "I did not raise you to be wealthy, Grant, I raised you to be right." He gazed at her from the other side of the table, his emotions simmering just beneath the surface. "I am aware. And occasionally," she stated, "doing the right thing means that you are compelled to leave your comfort zone. You enter rooms that are not welcoming, you speak when it would be more convenient to remain silent, and you descend to the bank, despite the fact that it may feel beneath you. Because nothing is beneath you when it is happening to someone you care about." He blinked. "At least once. Twice." Then, he grinned. "You should really participate in that meeting." Gloria replied, "Certainly. However, I will be bringing my cane, purse, and full voice. I will not be compromising my integrity this time." Grant chuckled. "You did not soften it, you merely rendered it sound empathetic." Then, she retrieved her serviette and applied it to the corner of her mouth. She grinned. Quiet does not equate to kind. However, that was not the conclusion. Gloria had one additional point to make. 3 weeks later, the community meeting was conducted at a modest civic center located just off Lancaster Avenue. There is no crimson carpet. There are no camera personnel. A podium, folding chairs, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Hailstone Federal Bank Listening Circle." Gloria arrived to a room that was already half full, which included not only bank staff but also consumers. Individuals who were older. Young professionals. Owners of small businesses. Additionally, there were a few individuals who she did not recognize, but she assumed were present to observe or provide feedback. She donned a cobalt blue blouse that enhanced the silver hue of her hair. She opted for her customary pearl earrings, which she had previously worn to her granddaughter's commencement, rather than any extravagant jewelry. The conversation became more relaxed upon her arrival. A number of individuals turned. Heads were raised. Grant was situated near the front of the room, however, he did not immediately rise. He was aware that his mother did not require an escort. Not today. Gloria did not proceed directly to the podium when it was her turn to speak. She stood adjacent to it, close enough to be audible but far enough to address everyone without the decorum. The chamber was devoid of noise. She exhaled. "I am Gloria Hightower, a retired school nurse who has resided in this location for more than 40 years. I have been a customer of Hillstone Federal for nearly 15 of those years. A few simple gestures. Recognition was expressed through a few murmurs. I arrived here today to recount my experience. However, this is not solely about the events that transpired at the bank that morning. That is straightforward. I was ill-treated. I was interrogated for attempting to deposit a check in my own name. The reason I was made to feel as though I did not belong was not due to anything I said or did, but rather to the way I appeared. Her voice was not trembling or rising, rather, it was firm, full, and low. Initially, I was not enraged. I sustained an injury. Given that I was aware that I had not committed any error. Nevertheless, an individual continued to regard me as suspicious. Someone determined that my dignity was subject to negotiation. She took a moment to contemplate the statement. I had no intention of speaking up. I intended to contact my son and wait in silence. However, I later came to the realization that silence is the outcome of individuals treating others in such a manner. They rely on our patience, politeness, and exhaustion. However, there are instances in which the most respectful course of action is to refuse to allow the situation to continue. The chamber maintained its respiration. I am not here to undermine anyone's career. I am not here for retribution. My objective is to effect change. It is not suitable for me. I am 73 years old and have witnessed enough of this world to understand its nature. However, the subsequent individual who enters a bank in good faith and exits with a sense of inferiority. A man in the rear of the room dabbed the corner of his eye. A woman across the aisle held her notepad without writing a word. Gloria's wrists were clasped together. We reside in a nation that frequently discusses equity. Regarding values. Regarding the equitable treatment of all individuals. However, those concepts are meaningless unless they are implemented in everyday situations, such as conversing with individuals who are not of our appearance, on the phone, or at the counter. She briefly glanced at Grant. He did not smile or nod, rather, he observed her in the same manner as one observes a fire that simultaneously humbles and comforts. She expressed her gratitude for your attentiveness. She then retreated without any fanfare. The room did not erupt in acclaim, it was unnecessary. A few heads bowed, and a few hands clapped gently. However, the lingering sensation was more substantial than the commotion. Reflection was utilized. Immediately following the meeting, individuals formed a queue to engage in conversation and exchange information, rather than pursuing handshakes or photographs. A woman stated that she had encountered the same issue at a different branch. A young man remarked that it reminded him of the manner in which his grandmother was once pursued through stores. The bank personnel, for the most part, simply expressed their gratitude through their eyes, which spoke volumes more than their words could. Grant sent Gloria a text message that evening as she sat in her kitchen, sipping tea. They will recall your extraordinary performance. She responded gradually. I did not do it to be remembered, rather, I did it to ensure that they remember one another.